Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Nos programmes offrent plusieurs langues. Veuillez visiter suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Nuestros programas ofrecen varios idiomas. Visite suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Nossos programas oferecem vários idiomas. Acesse suprememastertv.com/schedule.
हमारे कार्यक्रम पेश किए जाते हैं कई भाषाओं में. कृपया देखें suprememastertv.com/schedule.
我们的节目提供多种语言，请看 suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Rancangan kami menawarkan banyak bahasa. Sila kunjungi suprememastertv.com/kehadapan-schedule.
برامجنا متوفرة بالعديد من اللغات. يرجى زيارة suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Наши программы предлагают много языков. Пожалуйста, посмотрите suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Programele noastre oferă multe limbi. Vă puteți uita pe suprememastertv.com/schedule.
A GMO means genetically modified organisms, or genetically engineered. Scientists typically take genes from one species, like viruses or bacteria, and force it into the DNA of other species, like soybeans or corn.
Genetic roulette, the gamble of our lives.
What have I done to my children? And what has been done to them without my consent?
Jeffrey Smith's Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods, part 1 of 3. Continue watching to find out more.
Esteemed friends, I am Capono. The sincere Lao people send you warm greetings with divine love. We are delighted to have you join us for part 1 of our 3-part series entitled Jeffrey Smith's Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods. Jeffrey Smith is a leading spokesperson on the health dangers of genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, and has been working on the issue for 22 years in 45 countries. He is the author of the best-selling book, Seeds of Deception, exposing industry and government lies about the safety of the genetically engineered foods you are eating. He is also an award-winning filmmaker whose productions include the feature-length documentaries Genetic Roulette and Secret Ingredients.
It's the most dangerous thing facing human beings in our generation.
GMO, genetically modified organisms. They take genes from one species and force it into the DNA of other species.
We have hundreds of millions of acres of genetically modified crops that have been planted in the United States, and yet most people are not aware.
It is our honor to have Jeffrey Smith join us to discuss GMOs and introduce his book, Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods.
They can also genetically engineer animals and humans and algae and mushrooms, etc. So the process causes massive collateral damage in the DNA. And the process of transferring the genes, and also even the gene editing now, where they rearrange genes within the same species. So they cause mutations up and down the DNA, which can turn a benevolent food, for example, into a carcinogen or an allergen, or increase the level of toxins. So the side effects that occur as a result of the process of genetic engineering are the most common results of the practice.
Evidence shows that there are now actual diseases related to the consumption of GMOs. These include Roundup ready crops, which are genetically modified to resist the heavily used glyphosate-based herbicide Roundup.
I started speaking at medical conferences to physicians, who then started prescribing non-GMO diets to their patients. And when I went back to those same medical conferences and interviewed the doctors, they stunned me, telling me that their patients were getting better by virtue of just switching to non-GMO and often organic food. And I asked one woman, so what's the result? She said, I put everyone on a non-GMO diet and everyone gets better. And I was skeptical, and I said, What percentage? She says, I said everyone, 100%. All right, 98% show improvements. I said, how many people did you put on a non-GMO diet? And she took a little time to calculate it and looked up and said, about 5,000. So I said, can I come to your practice and interview some patients? She said, sure. So sure enough, her patients and another person's patients and another person's patients, incredible stories, sometimes changes within a day or two, sometimes within a few days or a few weeks, depending on the condition. So I started to ask the people who were attending my lectures around the United States, I said, for those of you who tried to remove GMOs in a large way, what did you notice getting better? And so we decided to survey our list at the Institute for Responsible Technology, and 3,256 people reported getting better from 28 different conditions when they switched to non-GMO and largely organic diets. And it's no surprise that the number one condition was digestive problems. The number two was fatigue. Number three was overweight or obesity. Number four was clouding of consciousness. Number five was mood problems such as anxiety or depression. And then there's food allergies and sensitivity. And every one of those is 50% or above. In fact, digestive disorders was 85% of the respondents. There's memory and concentration, joint pain, seasonal allergies, gluten sensitivity, which is 42%. So the explosion of gluten sensitivity may be related to the explosion of GMO consumption.
What remarkable findings! Let's go appreciate some organic, non-GMO vegan snacks. We'll be right back here on Supreme Master Television.
The process of insertion plus cloning creates massive collateral damage. There can be hundreds or thousands of mutations up and down the DNA.
We have gone from food in its whole food form to food undergoing a scientific experiment.
She said that they weren't able to process the food correctly and they would bloat up and die from it.
They can put it on the market without telling the FDA or to consumers.
Welcome back to our interview with Jeffrey Smith, author of Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods. Jeffrey tells us how genetically modified foods strongly affect not only humans, but also animals.
We also have experience of pets when they are switched to an organic diet or a non-GMO diet. You can hear about this at petsandgmos.com. Veterinarians say sometimes all they do is the first intervention is put them on an organic diet. And one person said 50 to 70% of the animals get better just with that. These animals are taking a huge hit when they eat GMOs. And so the veterinarians that have been in business since before GMOs were introduced in the mid-1990s, they saw the destruction of health. They saw the reduction of lifespan. Same with the livestock veterinarians. They saw the destruction of health, etc. In the animals when the food supply was switched to a genetic engineered food supply. So now you have animal feeding studies, pets experience, livestock experience, human experience, and you have epidemiological data. We have over 30 different diseases that show that when you track the percentage of corn and soy in the United States that's genetically engineered, it goes up in a certain slope. Now, that corn or soy is Roundup ready, genetically engineered to be sprayed with Roundup herbicide, a very dangerous poison that's now absorbed into the food that's consumed by people. So you can take the percentage of corn and soy that's GMO, or you can take the amount of Roundup or glyphosate-based herbicides. Glyphosate's the so-called active ingredient in Roundup, and you can plot a slope of that. That same slope, it turns out, matches the increase in autism, insomnia, diabetes. The list goes on and on and on. 30 different diseases so far.
Jeffrey Smith insightfully points out the three main problems with GMOs.
The first is the process of genetic engineering itself. It causes massive collateral damage in the DNA. So you can have allergens, toxins, carcinogens. It's like throwing a dart into the genome. into our DNA, but many darts, because you can have hundreds or thousands of mutations up and down the DNA, changing the levels of expression of the crop. And there's a Roundup Ready soy that has up to 7 times the amount of an existing soy allergen. So that's one of the causes of why genetic engineering may be causing or exacerbating these particular conditions. The second is there's corn and cotton in the United States, as well as soy in South America, that produce an insecticide called Bt. Bt stands for Bacillus thuringiensis. It's soil bacteria. You can take the soil bacteria and gather the spores in the bacteria and spray it on crops, and certain insects that eat those crops will die because it'll cause little holes in the walls of their guts, which will kill the insects. Now, the Bt toxin has been shown to elicit immune responses and allergic responses in humans. It was also shown in a test tube or in a petri dish to actually cause the same type of holes in human cells that it uses to kill insects. So if we have holes in the walls of our intestines, that's a problem. A study in Canada showed that 93% of the pregnant women tested had the Bt toxin in their blood, and Bt toxin is toxic to red blood cells, but they also had the Bt toxin in 80% of the blood of the unborn fetuses. So now we have a hole-poking toxin in the blood of the offspring of the next generation. Now we look at the third category. Nearly all GMOs out there are engineered not to die when sprayed with herbicide. So you have Roundup Ready soy, corn, cotton, canola, sugar beets, and alfalfa. The 6 main GMOs, all of them have major varieties as Roundup Ready. So Roundup, with its active ingredient glyphosate, gets sprayed on the crops, and because it's mixed with other things, it forces it through the tissues into the plant, so it's systemic, it's throughout the plant, but it gathers in the food portion. And so the residues of that glyphosate is high in GMOs. And that glyphosate is listed by the World Health Organization as a class 2 carcinogen, a probable human carcinogen.
We thank Jeffrey Smith for sharing his in-depth knowledge on GMOs. For more information on Jeffrey Smith and his work, please visit responsibletechnology.org. Loving viewers, it's been a pleasure to have you with us today. Join us again on Saturday, August 10, for part 2 of Jeffrey Smith's Genetic Roulette, the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods. Coming up next is Suchi Medical Foundation's Healthcare Professionals on Optimal Wellness, part 2 of 3, right after Noteworthy News, here on Supreme Master Television. May your day be filled with wonderment and joy.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/HL.